Welcome to Occupation Breakdown. I'd like to take a moment here to watch a video to help introduce our guest here today.
And finally, to me, this clip really resonated, and I know it will resonate with you. Here's a Minneapolis ICE protester dressed as a walrus, and he says, "I was just a nerdy gamer guy. I wasn't political at all. But what transpired here in Minneapolis has made me political, has made me want to do something, has made me want to get involved." He goes, "I want to go back and be a nerdy gamer again, but I had to come out here and help my community." Watch this.
I've been working, trying to fight this. I was just a nerdy gamer guy that would like to go back to just playing video games with friends, but until we get the ICE out of Minnesota and hopefully abolished, I'm going to continue fighting because this is ridiculous. And I never thought I'd be a political activist. That's, my parents were well off. And so we didn't have to worry about it being white. You don't have to worry about it being a male. You don't have to worry about it being straight. We didn't have to worry about it. But it's gotten to a point where empathy needs to win over those people on the fence where it's not affecting them now. And we need to do something all together. And I think that's what's so big about this moment right now in Minnesota is we're showing up. Everybody is showing up. No matter where we're from.
Right. So we spoke with Congressman Ro Khanna yesterday. One of the things that he told us is that he is going to introduce a bill to defund ICE. What are your thoughts on that?
Needs to happen faster, but I appreciate those step forward. It feels like our government is way too slow right now, hence why we're out in the streets yelling for change. And the faster we can shut ICE down with the legal processes, I think the faster we can rebuild. And I'm hoping for that track for our government here, because right now we're veering off the rails. Trump's ignoring all the legal court orders. His department, everything he's doing is showing he does not care about the rules. And we need some of our politicians to start fighting back, taking their gloves off as well. Stop worrying about who's going to vote for them. Stop worrying about their constituents, trying to get those moderate voters. We need to see action and passion from our leaders.
All right. And welcome. This is the Whipple Walrus, Lay Cashew. Welcome to the show today. Thank you.
Hi, thanks.
So I just want to to start this story off. Basically, I met you actually at the 50501 birthday party. So we're both a part of the organization. I actually was, though, spending some time at Whipple in about, February or so after Alex Preddy was murdered. So I think after all the fencing and everything was put up. So I actually do remember seeing you there at some point. So I had seen you there before, but I was able to meet you at the party and kind of talk to me about some of the things that you were doing there. So welcome to the show. And I guess I'd just like to talk to you about how did you end up as the Whipple Walrus, going from, just like you said there, a person just video gaming to a life of activism.
It's and like I said in the video, I never thought I'd be doing this. As someone that was living through the filter of white privilege, you have the ability to ignore a lot of things that are happening around you. And I was seeing that happening more and more. And the empathy in me was winning over for sure. And it wasn't just because, the people that were being affected, like we saw Renee Good and Alex Preddy being executed. It's not because they were white. It's just because the community around me was suffering. And it's not just with the ICE taking, the worst of the worst, which I believe the statistic is 6 out of 7 of the, really bad people were already imprisoned in our jail system. It's so the malicious targeting of neighbors around me. Like I live in a heavy immigrant community right now in the city that I'm at, and seeing the parents worrying about sending their kid to school, seeing those parents worried about going to work and disappearing, like those things kept adding up to the point where it boiled over and I had to leave work. And so I clocked out and I told my boss I need time. And luckily I was able to use paid time off. And I basically took 3 weeks off in January to begin to protest, to get out there. And it started with one simple thing. It was an Instagram post by Smitten Kitten saying, "Hey, we're being harassed by ICE while we're accepting donations. We're taking in food, and any essential items." And so that's where I showed up. Like, I know I can have a direct, a positive impact here. And I don't know anything about being an activist. Like, I've been a kind of a shut in, being a nerdy gamer guy that plays D&D with friends across the country online. And I got there and just seeing the pain of the people coming to pick up supplies because they're so scared of being taken off the street. It was so raw, and it changed me in ways I can't really describe. It just felt like I was plugged into a movie where I'm giving goods to families that are running into the store, making sure no one's seeing them, grabbing some diapers, baby formula, and some canned goods, and then running back out of that store to just drive away because they didn't have enough supplies to make ends meet. It's just, it felt dystopian. And living in the area of Whipple, I then was turned on to, hey, there's a lot of protests there. That's where the main headquarters are. You see Greg Bavino was doing his big grandstanding in front of the Whipple building at that time. And so I showed up. And how I showed up was how I played, video games online. I was a streamer on Twitch, and I wore the Walrus onesie there to stand out. And that's how I told family and friends, I'm like, hey, if you see a walrus being dragged into a squad car or being dragged away in handcuffs, that's me. I seriously doubt anyone else is going to be in a walrus onesie out there. So it started as kind of a joke like that, but then it became almost like, when people saw me, people would smile a little bit. It brought a little bit of levity to just the gravity of the situations that we're in and the horrors that we're seeing.
Yeah.
And so I just stuck with it. And someone in my live stream dubbed me the Whipple Walrus, and it kind of stuck. It even became a search term on TikTok when someone commented it, and you could search it, and there's all my videos popping up. It's just been a wild 3 months that I never ever thought I'd be in this position where people are seeing me on the street and like, oh, hey, yo, what's up, Walrus? Great work. I really appreciate you being out there. And it's taken on a life of its own. And I really hope that it's been a very positive impact, because that's what I want. I'm not in it for the clout. I'm not in it for money. Everything I make on social media, I'm giving right back to Smitten Kitten's rent relief fund that they have going through their GoFundMe. It's been wild that my decision, that snap decision to just get out there, has led to me raising like $700 now for mutual aid and spreading awareness about what's going on.
Yeah. No, that's incredible. That's incredible. So I guess I got to ask, in that time, I was going to say it as a joke, but how many times have you had to wash that costume because of obviously sweaters or whatever, but I mean, chemical agents, though, you probably got hit a few times though, haven't you? Or maybe
I have been tear gas in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I don't know. I don't want to call myself a coward per se, but like, being around some of these larger protests, I know my position is I have to make sure I'm not taken and arrested, because I'm living paycheck to paycheck myself. And if I'm not able to go to my job and provide for, my house, my wife wouldn't be able to do it by herself. So I've tried to make sure that I'm there, but in, far enough away where I can't get wrapped up in a dangerous position, because we've seen it. Protests get hot. Someone throws something at a sheriff, and then bam, they're coming down on everybody in the area.
So do you know approximately what date you started going to Whipple? Because you said it was in January. Did you stop work? Was it when Renee Good died, or was it before that, or?
It was shortly after Renee Good was killed.
Okay.
Just doom scrolling, obviously I've been worried about this, like a lot of Minnesotans, being a progressive person before all this went down, living through a lot of the horrific events that plague kind of Minnesota as a whole,
Yeah.
like Philando Castile.
Yep.
I was just 2 blocks away from when that happened. I was living in St. Paul at the time, and the outcry of that community was heartbreaking. And then you saw it with George Floyd. I know I'm skipping over others, but
Yeah.
George Floyd being a huge one is, obviously that had widespread effects across the country. We were thrust into the spotlight again for national media attention. And I remember very vividly in that era, that time, is I didn't know where my place was. Being a white dude and it being predominantly a minority problem or African American problem, like I supported them from the sidelines. I didn't want to get in the way. I didn't want to ruin what they were trying to say. I was trying to listen to their message. And so when this happened with Renee Good, and it seemed everybody was involved at this point. The minorities were losing their voice because if they spoke out, they were disappeared. And so I'm like, okay, well, time to use this white privilege that I've been afraid of. I need to get out there and do something. So long story, getting to Whipple essentially was, I believe it was like 2 days after they erected the barriers. And I'm having a hard time remembering when exactly that first happened.
That was probably around the same time I showed up. Let me look at my recordings.
Yeah, I have not the best at keeping
Give me a second.
record.
No, I know, right? I've been trying to do this. Maybe I deleted those. I hope I didn't. Maybe I did. I want to
I
say
believe it was
because Preddy. When did Preddy get murdered? Let's see. Let me look.
I know it was before Preddy getting executed in the streets.
I appreciate you using the proper terms, as I'm saying.
No, it's not me trying to be passive aggressive at all. It's just
I need to
my
be more
anger towards it.
Yeah, no. I mean, even to say, oh, when Renee Good died, it's like, no, when she was slaughtered.
She was executed.
Yeah. He was January 20th.
So I think it might have been like around the 20th.
Okay.
I was going there.
Wait, what did you say?
I know it was just a
after
few
the
days before
barriers?
then. Yeah.
Okay.
I was not there before the barriers,
Same here.
before they were put up. Because again, it was a hot zone. You saw the headlines of people getting tackled and tear gas there, not really knowing where I could be safe in that situation. Once the barriers were up, I could kind of see. I saw a video of someone going there. And I'm like, oh, well, that's easy. I can do that. And so started going there. So it was probably around the 20th when I started showing up to Whipple.
Yeah. What time of day were you going? Were you going like how, like time of day and then extended period? Like, are you going for hours at a time? Or are you just popping in for a little bit? Like, how does that look?
Yeah, so I was going for basically as long as I could stand the cold at the time. Excuse me. It was like there was one night I remember I couldn't sleep, and it was like, I don't know, 10:30 at this point. So I suited up anyways, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go out to Whipple. I believe this might have been like early February, and I was there from like roughly 10 o'clock until 3 in the morning, and I witnessed someone released at 2:30 in the morning into the cold. And that's kind of, I knew, these people are going to be released whenever they feel like it. And it really felt like the less eyes on the situation was the better for them. And so it's just, I try to go as long as I can.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never been there at night. I was basically going during like daytime, with like young kids and stuff. It's tough outside of that. But yeah, I was just doing like daytime weekdays. So I never was there during anything intense. And then, it's one of those things I think when I first started, it was right after Alex Preddy. And I remember there was a bunch of news there initially. There was a lot of press there. And then as I would go the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, it just like fizzled, and then it was just normal people there, but definitely I think it's one of those things that, yeah, I had a big interest in going there. Obviously, yeah, it was one of those things where I was terrified of at first. I mean, honestly, completely terrified. Because I was like, I got kids, I don't want to be arrested and, have to deal with that stuff. So, obviously I'm not afraid, I guess, of getting tear gas, but I definitely don't want to get arrested.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, at that point it's like, so I was like, okay, well, if I go during the weekdays, they put up the fences, and then, I talk to people there and they're like, hey, yeah, they're not coming out and just like abducting people anymore because they used to do that, and so
Yeah.
it, middle of the night, middle of the day. I remember originally I'd be watching it and they'd be like, hey, we need Whipple Watchers. We need more people so they don't just come out and grab one person if we're the only person. Because they were doing it at
Yeah.
some point. So at that point, initially, it was a lot more aggressive. Once they put up the fences, things got safer. Unless you're going on the weekends or a big, when there's a big event or something, it's kind of like pretty predictable when it's going to be, pretty safe to be there.
Hmm.
So I started going down there, and I think just talking to people and talking to, obviously the Haven people, and just kind of like learning about what's going on. I just got really fascinated with the situation because, as I was kind of talking to you before, I'm from Northwest Indiana, Chicagoland. I'm from outside of Minnesota, and when you're talking about your friends, family, all these people that from outside of Minnesota, looking into this situation, we're like, people don't fucking believe us. We sound crazy. I feel When I explain the situation, I feel crazy. Like, I'm like, I know this sounds crazy. So you talk about these things and it just doesn't sound real. So I think going to Whipple and seeing what's going on there became this like reality. But do you have any situations that popped out, or stories or things you've heard even secondhand, that really kind of made you want to continue to be there, or something that was just startling, that was maybe like, holy shit, one of those moments where you're like, I can't look back after you see something like that?
Yeah, in regards to Whipple, it really was the stories surrounding the releases of females that were showing signs of abuse. People being rumored to being dumped into the woods in the surrounding Fort Ripley area.
Hmm.
I know that was a circulated rumor. I believe it, but I never witnessed it firsthand. But the fact that the you know ICE agents seemingly were doing this without any fear of reprimand or you know getting in trouble because they felt like they were unstoppable. It really felt like I had to be there to witness these things at the very least. If I couldn't help, I could be a witness. And I've seen, with my own eyes, them releasing kids from the detention center into a blizzard with just t-shirts on, no jackets, and their caretaker was with them in a similar fashion. And the callous disregard that those guards had for those kids is heartbreaking. The seeing the lack of humanity and empathy coming from these people inside of Whipple when we get those glimpses of them is appalling. And if Haven Watch hadn't have formed, I think there would have been a lot more disappearances. I think there would have been a lot more deaths. And that is something why I wanted to be there. By the time I was going there, Haven Watch was pretty regular there already.
Hmm.
But, it just serving as another witness to these atrocities, giving them company. I know I've talked with a lot of the volunteers over the couple months here now. They're sitting through long hours of the night by themselves. And if a goofy guy in a walrus onesie can, make it a little less miserable, I'm happy to do that for them. And just overall, hearing about the like I said, the abuses and making sure like the more eyes that we have on them, the more cameras pointed at them, the less they can get away with. And I felt like that was happening slowly over time as we started to see lawmakers actually start to pay attention as we were crying out these things that we were witnessing with evidence. And then that's when it seemed like DHS was actually starting to dial in the recklessness that they were showing.
Yeah. Yeah, I have some friends that work with Haven, and so I had heard about the people being released into the forest situation, and I know that that kind of intrigued me, but it just never really was able to materialize into, who knows what's actually happening, and how do you even
Yeah.
how do you even how do you even deal with that? You know, like have scouts in the forest or something, and it's like how many parks do we have around here, and they're gonna find another
Right.
spot, and so it's like I don't know. So that was like that really was troubling when I heard that. And I think that was actually what kind of got me wanting to go there in the first place, was when I heard some of that stuff happening. But yeah, I think, and then once my friend was also acting as a translator, and once you start to hear the like human toll of the things happening to these families, and the way I would think about it is obviously if, there's people being released that were maybe like, someone who was following ICE or whatever fuck. But when it comes down to like immigration arrests or whatever, wrongful detentions, and typically if you see someone who's like brown walking out of there, yeah, they probably, and it's like, okay, well, if you're getting released, obviously you're here, they're letting you go, they fucked up, so they
Mhm.
made that mistake. And then, in some cases, like you said, you start to see signs of abuse, or, were they just here for a couple hours? Were they here for days? I heard some longer cases. Were there any longer, like, detentions that you had heard of in your time? Like, of when you heard people released, or just like from hearing conversations or anything?
I heard the average from 5051 Minnesota was 2 to 3 months of being detained at Whipple. So, with that logic, we're not seeing the people that have been taken during the surge yet.
2 to 3 months?
Yeah, that's what I heard. I have, like I said, this is a
Yeah,
secondhand,
yeah.
but from 5051 to say that, I I'll take that as truthful. Granted, it is an average, so it's longer or shorter. I think there are shorter cases where it's a little bit more obvious that they are a citizen. They just got caught up in walking while brown, which is just an absolute absurd thing to think about in the first place. But yeah, I fully believe that there's going to be a large amount of people being released out of Whipple from the Metro surge, that they claim they're not deporting people from here, but I mean, there's people tracking those flights. So the people that haven't been deported through that, I fully believe are still inside of Whipple. We're waiting for them to be processed and
I
released.
want to say I was looking the other day, and it was like 3,600 people or something that they've tracked or whatever.
Hmm.
But yeah, and I mean, have you been able to witness a flight before, or any of that?
I've just seen the videos
Okay,
online.
I really want to go, and I
I mean,
mean,
there's the plane areas that you can watch them.
it's
So
just every time I see the time, it's like, I'm never able to make it, or I see it and then I look at the
right.
time and I'm like, it's right now, because the warning is like 30 minutes or something. So it's a pretty tough thing to be able
Hmm.
to catch. But yeah, so, and I'm far enough away that it's like, yeah, I'd totally miss it. But anyways,
Fortunately, I'm not. That's
yeah. Well,
what makes it tougher for me.
I used to live in Mendota Heights, and so I'd ride my bike around that area. So, every time you drive over the bridge there, I have so many pictures of me just riding my bike in the morning, whatever, sunset, and, sunrise, blah, 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 just whatever weather, haze, all these things. And now I'm, looking back, it's like, shit, now I'm going to look back and I'm going to see that fucking building. It's just sticking out there, and it's like you can't unsee that place anymore.
Hmm.
And it's like it is just destroyed that neighborhood. It's destroyed that everything about that area. Um but I don't know. It just to me is like once I started to understand what was happening there, it was like how are we just sitting here and allowing this in our community? You know? Um so Yeah, I'm trying to think. So what of the people? I'm sure you've met obviously a ton of people because every time I go there, it doesn't matter what day you go there. There is action. There's people coming in and out. There's always something. I mean, it's been a continual protest for a year, over a year now. I mean, it's been basically since like after Trump was elected and they started operating out of there. It's pretty much like people have been there Whipple watching it in some, form or fashion, you
Yeah.
know? And then also eventually they started watching the airport. They said, so all those things came up. But are there any like notable people that you or groups or, obviously I'm thinking like, have you seen any of like the interfaith actions or Vets for Peace or, been on any of those days?
Trying to think. I've been at the big ones. The last one was March 1st, and then before that was the native prayer ceremony where they gave us all the prayer ribbons. And that turned into a little bit more of the Operation Dildo Blitz, is what Jolly Good Ginger called it. Outside of that, I haven't been a part of any of the other protests there. I did the first general strike, and then I also participated in the second one in those marches. I almost went to the airport when the faith leaders were there,
Yeah, I
since
know.
I'm so close. But because that is an airport, I didn't know the legality of how that was going to shape up. And so I shied away from that. And so it was tough it's been tough trying to navigate where is as safe enough for me to go,
Yeah.
but also still trying to raise awareness.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
For sure. So this is a perfect segue into our second video here. And so I actually, one of the times I was there, I don't know if it's an ongoing thing, but it was a Friday. And so Vets for Peace was there. And I think she's like, the chapter president or something, but she would walk around with her blowhorn. She had like a World War II, like, retro helmet or whatever. But she would just walk around and just be yelling at ICE the whole time, and was always just doing such a, I don't know, one of those people you're like, I just love following around because I was taping and doing, So I followed her, and as we were there, a bunch of people realized the National Guard was staging and they were all wearing like riot gear and all this stuff. Like, there's nothing going on. It's like a Friday afternoon. It was totally chill there. So everybody was kind of annoyed about, the fact that that was happening. So the Vets for Peace people, a couple of them had gone and actually, followed them with a blowhorn basically and went up to the National Guard troops and just started talking to them. So they had a conversation with one of the groups. They came back and told us, and we're like, hey, there's more over here. So they went and I followed, and I have some footage that I released already of them just basically talking to the guardsmen, women, whatever, and saying, talking about the, feelings of being in their shoes as someone who is working for the government and who has to be there, whether it's like the park police or, the people that are just like, you're not ICE, but you're still fucking there. And we understand, it's kind of that weird understanding of like, I know it's your job, but what the fuck are you doing? But also, I don't know,
mhm.
it's like this weird thing. So anyway, so I'm going to play the next video that I grabbed off of your TikTok here that kind of intrigued me. And then we'll just kind of talk about this after.
Hey guys, so while I'm working on other projects and stuff, I'm still thinking about yesterday when I was at Whipple that one of the guards at Whipple essentially reached out using their patrol car's megaphone. And they basically said that they agree with what I'm saying on this platform, on our stances on what we're fighting for out there. And we challenged them on essentially, what are you doing on that side of the fence? Come to our side of the fence, and even gave them presented them with information that could help change their career maybe. And so hopefully that positive interaction can have a ripple effect, and that can affect more people over there. So guard, if you're watching this, I'm still thinking about you and hope you're doing well.
So before I let you talk about that, I guess my question is, so when you go to Whipple or any of these protests, obviously there's a overwhelming amount of anger being lobbed, in a certain direction for plenty of good reason. But every once in a while, you do hear someone saying something along the lines of like trying to reach their humanity or trying to just like legitimately, because it's like if all these people are, if none of them stand down or turn sides, it's like, how is this ever going to change? But I just want to kind of ask you how that video kind of came about, and maybe just in general, if you've been having those situations happen, like if any thoughts about that.
Yeah. So that was an interesting day. It was a few days ago, and I showed up to Whipple like usual. I had my abolish ICE flag behind me, and I get up to kind of the first intersection where the barriers start, and all I hear from across the street in the Whipple parking lot was, "Hey, Walrus." And I'm like, okay, they see me, sure. And so I'm thinking this is going to be a fight, or at least back and forth, the protesters saying mean things, and then we've witnessed ICE agents mocking us in return. So I thought this was going to be something like that. So I was like, at first trying to like get a rise out of him, kind of see if I could get under his skin a little bit. And I don't think he could quite hear me. So I went back to get the megaphone out of my car. And so I came back and was just like, "You wanted to talk? I'm here." And it turned into him saying, "I just wanted to let you know we're not all ICE agents. We don't think all the same things. And I follow you and I agree with a lot of what you say. And I just want you to know that we're here. What I'm doing on this side of the fence is protecting your rights to be there protesting." And,
Sorry.
you know,
Go on.
I understand a little bit of the absurdity to
Yeah.
that, because,
Yeah.
like, if they weren't there, in general, we wouldn't have anything to protest.
Yeah.
But so, like, I get it, and
Yeah.
like, it's his job, and he's just trying to do his job and trying to be friendly enough with us to allow us that space and not get in our way as best as he can with the parameters that he's given. And so it just turned into kind of a positive interaction in my opinion, because after that I was on live on TikTok, and he was basically saying that he's watching the live. He's reading chat he was there with everyone in my live. And so then we started, okay, well, you can quit your job. There's other places to work out there. And so then we started to compile a list of like, hey, MnDOT, the state of Minnesota, transportation department, they have union jobs that are opening up and have really good benefits. And we got contacts that could help you out that work within the state already and are friends with recruiters. Let's work together here to get you a new job. And after we discussed that, he gave a friendly beep on his horn, like he was still listening, and was like, "All right, cool." At least that's the way I'm interpreting it.
Okay,
And
so wait, to back up. So
Go ahead.
you were actually in the parking lot or wherever you were at still. You were on
Yeah, I was
your
behind the
live.
barrier.
So you
on
were
my
on
live.
live on your phone sitting there, and then you realized he's actually there as you're okay, so that was all in that same moment there. Okay, just to be clear, I got a little confused there.
Yep.
Okay.
No, it's yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, because he follows me and he's watching my lives while I'm there. And so he knows me and kind of how where I stand, because when I'm live, I'm essentially just rehashing my views on all of this. And so that's what he's saying. He's like, "Oh, yeah, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. Yeah, I don't agree on everything, but I agree with a lot of what you're saying." And after getting him like job changing or career changing advice, giving a little friendly honk on his horn was just like so surreal in that moment of like we actually made a connection across this really, like, I would say it is a very bitter, angry line that has been drawn through the history of these past few months. And I sincerely hope that that makes a ripple effect, that he can positively impact coworkers around him to drive a little bit of humanity in there and just de-escalation. Because we see with the Hennepin County sheriffs, they're very quick to action, and like we've recorded them really quick to throwing us to the ground and arresting us, and same with the state troopers. When I showed up today, actually, we messaged on Signal that this guard that we had contact with, I was there today, and he saw me without the walrus onesie on and still recognized me, which is kind of crazy to think about. And so he came out of the Whipple parking lot and drove to the Blue Line bus or transit parking lot and met me there. And we had a face to face conversation for about 20 minutes, just discussing what's going on, things that he knew, what he can't tell me, what he doesn't know. It's just trying to like put a face to things and really push that, you know, he doesn't hate us and he really is trying his best, which
Holy shit.
take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, no, this is just crazy. I'm like, wait, what day did you say that was this happened?
This was today.
Today? Holy shit.
Yeah, he met me face to face today and came over. I didn't call him over. He was just like, "Hey, Walrus, stay there." And then he like sped over to talk to me. And I did a lot of listening. I let him talk because I wanted to let him lead the conversation with where he was comfortable with. I wanted to reiterate to him that I'm not going to try and throw him under the bus and like, you know, out him and get him in trouble, because if he's legitimately doing his best to shield us from some of the atrocities and the pressure of just wanting to get us out of there, us protesters out of there, you know, if he's helping keep that safe space for us, I don't want to ruin that by getting him in trouble. So it was just a very surreal moment of making a connection with someone that is on the other side of that fence.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, and it is a weird thing. So obviously as you go there long enough, obviously there's just agents and all this thing. I mean, whatever you think about it, at the end of the day, you start to realize, like, yeah, these are just fucking people working, you know? And I heavily disagree with, you know, a lot of it. So I'm not even going to act like that. I don't. But,
Yeah.
you know, I'm really interested in, because obviously it's like capitalism right now, the economy, all these things, it is like full tilt against us. Everything is tilted against us. The entire thing, the entire system is built to just like, we're at the point where any random person is just in a shit position right now. And I don't mean this as a, you know, anything against you, but if you're in the video game community, obviously you're around, you know, more gamers. There's probably lots of toxic masculinity, and you
Yeah.
know, we're talking about like the male loneliness epidemic, or, you know, whatever.
Absolutely.
That combined with this economy, and then some of those people, maybe if they become socially more icky, then they become less employable, you know. And then all of a sudden you've got this place that is like, hey, we'll take you in, you know. Maybe even some of these people get paid really fucking well. I've actually heard various things, because I've actually had some people, I think there's some of them that are taking some really shit pay.
Yeah.
I've heard some things back and forth, so I don't think all of them are making that good of money. But that's another discussion there. But I guess, like, how do we start to work towards like de-radicalizing them? I guess, I mean, honestly, you having conversations like that, that's incredible. But, you know, obviously I think everybody does want to say fuck you and, you know, do all that stuff, but it's like you're there long enough and you start to see it. And even the Haven people, they still have to interact with the people at the gate, and there's interactions that happen back and forth. But then at some point it's like, these people are going to start to know each other. And then you start to be like, this is not just even if it's a person with a mask or whatever, you know,
Mm-hmm.
it just becomes something different, you know, regardless of what you think about them. But it's kind of like, how the fuck do we move on past this, you know, point? And I don't even know, you know, with a lot of these people, but it's like, until someone gives them some type of an off ramp, or I'm sure a lot of them are there for the hate and the radicalization and stuff like that. There's probably a fair amount of them that are there because they don't have many other options. Maybe if there's that percentage, how do we reach them and how do we pull them out?
Yeah. And kind of my thoughts on that would be just being open as much as you want to just spit in their face for the amount of pain that their organization, under that umbrella, the amount of tyranny and just lack of humanity that is being shown through them. I think you got to look at it as there's a lot of bad eggs in that basket, but there are some good ones that may not have been there the entire time. In kind of have fallen into, well, everything happened pretty quickly when Trump became president for the second term. He enacted things really quickly and they were kind of swept up in it. And this guard specifically talked about how he was actually on the southern border in Mexico. And he shared a story where there was said it was a 10-year-old girl that was clearly abused. And the family was saying, take us, but get her help. And he described that this girl had a broken eye socket from it was horrible, right? And he said he carried her for about a mile to get her into his car to drive her to get medical attention. And so I feel like, someone that's gone through that has that humanity in them, has that ability to empathize with the hurt that is happening in this community and now spreading throughout the country. And I think they're just in a position where there's not much they can do, but right now they're good that they can is letting us continue to protest and be there. And he did encourage us to keep screaming, obscenities at the agents coming in and out, make their lives hell because of the hell that they're doing out, in the streets. And so he was very much.
Is he like DHS or something, but maybe not ICE, or is he?
Yeah, he definitely wasn't ICE. I think he's just a DHS security detail.
Yeah.
And he said that he hasn't been here for too long. I think he said he's been here for about a month.
Okay.
So they move people around, from my guess, and the fact that he was on the border. So it's I don't know. I kind of look at it as we got to find our, World War I. There's the Christmas truce. I don't know if you know much about that, but we need something like that. And to anyone watching that doesn't know, essentially there was a ceasefire that, was along the Western Front during the First World War. At Christmas, they came to a truce and they had a soccer match and, saw the enemy as a human being. And I think, I'm not saying we need to have a soccer game with DHS personnel, but at least be open to talking to them, because this same guard has a job to do, and they're not trying to get in trouble, and we're protesters trying to get our point across. And so there's got to be that some middle ground that we can come to where we can have a human to human conversation. Take our protester out of it, take their job out of it, and just see where we're at and what we can do to come together to fix the situation.
So, okay, two thoughts I have there. Okay, so obviously you've probably heard this before. Whipple's been in operation with ICE since like the early 2000s, since the early Bush years. And so a lot of people will be like, ICE has been here this whole time and we never had an issue until now. And obviously, I'm not even going to ask you that because come on, stupid as fuck. But when I think about that, though, are you familiar with Ken Klippenstein? He's a journalist. So basically, he did a article basically where he was able to get insight to a bunch of current DHS, current ICE agents, but people that are veterans, longer veterans of the agency. So not recent hires, in the recent blitz or anything. And they were basically talking about how fed up they are with the new recruits, how poorly they're trained, poorly they're managed. They're out like drinking on the job. So they're like doing like stakeouts, and they're passing around like flasks and stuff like that. So it was interesting that, kind of you're talking about this. Obviously this person was, picked up off the border. Not all the people coming in here were ICE agents, actually. They took FBI, they took ATF, they took all these other agencies. And so maybe this person was actually legitimately going and actually in a task force to take child molesters or human traffickers away. And instead they're like, hey, sorry, you're going to go stalk grandmas at a grocery store or something, you're going to go stalk a daycare right now and go terrorize some Latinos or Somali or something,
Mhm.
So yeah, I guess it is tough, because it's like, there's those new recruits, they're probably there, but they at first did have to grab a lot of these people and reassign them. And so it's like, how do we pull at the strings of those people? And, so I appreciate that you're doing what you're doing. And I'd say continue to have those conversations, obviously within reason. But it's like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I don't know how else we move on past this. If there are other people that are involved, and it's because they were just in the government long standing, you know it's a tough.
I mean, yeah, I can totally see, especially with government, how quickly regime changeover happens, as soon as election goes through, your boss is replaced with someone else. All of a sudden you have a new list of directives, and how do you weave through that? And so I think just this whole situation with this guard admitting that he follows me and agrees with a majority of what I'm saying, it does put a new light on it. Like the black and white is a little bit more gray when it comes to stuff like this. And, obviously an ICE agent ripping someone out of their home without a warrant, without anything outside of their brown and look remotely like someone they're actually supposed to be grabbing, that is black and white. There is no gray area with that. That is 100% an atrocity that needs to end, and there needs to be justice for. But in this situation where it's just a guard that is attempting to keep a protest area safe, I think there needs to be a little bit more of leniency to it. Because I noticed that he's been chattier with other protesters now. I think he feels a little bit more comfortable speaking out. As today there was a snow object that was not a snowman, but a snowman part, and that was on federal property. So they had to remove it.
Was it a snow dick?
It was a
Oh,
snow dick.
yes.
So it was
I didn't actually see
like
it, but
very
I was like,
detailed.
I'm sure it
Yeah,
was.
it was very detailed. I saw pictures of it. This was today. And so the protesters were upset that, hey, they ruined our beautiful sculpture. And then his response was, I didn't want to tear it down, but it was on federal property and I had to. And,
Man.
the back and forth that they were having with the megaphones, I never saw any of this happening before a
Yeah.
couple days ago,
Yeah.
and I think this is the start. Like, we need to nurture that connection. And they were still being really harsh towards them, which, I mean, fair. They're angry. They're
Yeah.
upset.
Yeah, for sure.
100% justified. But I think we need to look at trying to nurture some of these positive interactions. Like, I say positive a little loosely, obviously, but I've also heard things from Haven Watch where they would go up to the guards, and like you were saying earlier, they're forming relationships with these people
You know
because
it. You
they're doing their
know
job.
it. It's gonna happen.
And
It's gonna happen.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think there's an in there of just those small, short interactions. They stick with you. I know they're sticking with me. Hence why we saw that video of me just going, I'm still thinking about this. And it's been a day, and like, I'm trying to put myself in their shoes. And what would I do in that situation? We're not the same people, but obviously he's got worries. I don't know his story. And maybe maybe he's, in a financial bind like a lot of us are,
Yeah.
and can't just up and quit and become homeless. I know there are people out there that have quit jobs on moral grounds and have become homeless because of it, but not everyone is able to do that. It's, again, it's that kind of that gray area seeping into where it's been so black and white for so long for a lot of us protesters of, obvious evil and wrong on that side of the fence, and us on this side of the fence, we're the good side. And it's really tough to navigate this when there's a little bit of a face on that other side of the fence.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you ever meet the guy handing out Bibles there?
He approached me a couple of times. I just you politely was like, "Hey, and I'm all right. It's not for me."
I engaged him, and it was funny because his big point was that we need to, humanize the people on the other side or whatever. And I was like, "Oh, I got it, but don't you have an issue of what they're doing?" "Oh, I'm not here to get political." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay,
Of
yeah,
course. Like I'm here to be political at this point. I'm here to look at him and go, "Hey, what you're protecting is wrong on levels I don't have words for." And he will say, "Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree that there is awful lot of horrific things happening." And he described it as, they look at it as just collateral, which is such a way to brush it off. Like, we were going for this, horrible person, this drug dealer, this person that's, we believe, is murdered, you know, people. But this person that looked like them and it was in the general area of them, and we grabbed them and ruined their life, that's just collateral.
they both had the same last name,
Sure. Yeah.
you know.
You know, so it's like, how do we fix that? How do we turn collateral into an actual person? Like, military numbers where it's like, oh, 1,000 troops died in Iran today from a strike or a clash between forces. And we have a president that won't even be bothered to go to the airfield where they're being shipped back in boxes and at least give them a salute or just some sort of respect. And we're seeing that mirrored with these ICE agents that just don't care about the harm that they're doing. And then you throw in the wild pitch here with the guard who sees all of this and just seems to not know how to be helping. It's, do I quit my job and potentially let someone worse come into my position who won't protect the protesters, who will actively try to, harm them? Or, do I stay here and do the best I can?
Yeah, did you see the ICE whistleblower? I want to say his name is like Ryan something, but the guy um, he went in front of like Congress or something, and he's Ryan Schwank. Yeah. And so that was something that, yeah, I found that, testimony to be really interesting, but it was similar to kind of the Ken Klippenstein thing where it was like, yeah, the training is pathetic. But at one point he said, yeah, they were attending a training. And I think it was something where it was like dealing with, like, they had people there acting as it's like a crowd or whatever, and it was a crowd control type of training, and they immediately started using chemical agents and pepper balls and stuff like that, like, on the people. Like, whoa, 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 back up, what are we doing? And they're like, why did you
Mm-hmm.
do that? And they're like, oh, we saw that in Minneapolis, this is how we do it. So the new recruits are seeing that and actually, citing that as their, this is why we're here, this is what we saw, this is what we're here to do. But
Tear gas sucks.
yeah, but it's crazy. So I think it's like, yeah, I think we are in that weird spot where, yeah, and one of the things I think it was Ken Klippenstein talked about was that the way they were, poorly managing the personnel because there's so many people here, and that a lot of the missions were more like, if someone volunteered and wanted to go out and do crazy stuff, the more they get assigned to things. So some of these people would just get really into the brutality and would just go out there again and again and again, so there's probably people out there that are just chilling and not doing much, just being like,
Yeah.
fuck, I just want a paycheck, and or just kind of riding along. But the more of those, the people that end up like, or the actual, let's say, quote unquote good agents, or whatever, the veterans and long holds and whatever, if they leave, then it could be like releasing the dogs on us, and just putting us with all these newbies and the completely reckless people. So yeah, I don't know. The whole thing is just a absolutely fucking abysmal situation. Um,
It really is.
I'm just trying to think here. I don't got too much else for you. Do you got any final thoughts kind of here before we end the day?
I mean, the final thoughts would be we need to go to pre 9/11. We need to abolish DHS and dissolve it back into its original departments where we can learn to manage and control each individual department. I mean, we didn't have open borders before then. So let's go back to having a reasonable, sane structure for our government to more easily handle and monitor, control, fund in reasonable ways. That's been a big thing that I've been trying to push, and that narrative of, we can get rid of ICE, we can get rid of DHS, but we still are going to want departments to control and monitor situations. We just don't need to give them the same budget that the Canadian Army has as a whole. Like, it's just so stuff like that where we can monitor abuse and hold more people accountable and have a much more clear chain of command to go off of.
So we talked about the earlier, obviously you did some help with Smitten Kitten. For people that are wondering ways that they could help, whether it's outside of the community or in the community, do you have any recommendations for just anybody out there, things they could do to get involved, to continue to, push against ICE and, help the community?
Yeah, there's plenty of organizations out there like 5051 we were talking about earlier. They have resources to go through. Reach out to them. Ironically enough, Smitten Kitten has a lot of amazing resources to go through to see how you can help Minnesota directly through monetary donations, and just keep your eyes open and actively search for it because a lot of it is suppressed, and it's not gonna just fall in your lap. You have to work for it. And as someone that kind of sat back and didn't ever really see anything like that, it doesn't fall in your lap. You're gonna have to go look for it. It's there. It's just, it's actively being suppressed because this regime doesn't want you opposing them. So why would they let those sites, these organizations, just be in your face telling you, hey, you can help, just come here and, sign up and volunteer.
Yeah. Thanks for that. And then for people that are looking to find you in general, obviously you do some video game streaming, kind of what I'll put up your link tree, but if you just kind of want to talk
Yeah,
generally of the things you do socially on social media.
sure. So I'm mostly active on TikTok now. I'm Lay Cashew. I also have a backup account that is the Whipple Walrus, but I go live there at Whipple. I try to get live at protests. I'm working a full time job, so I'm not there able to go to everything, but I try to. And then when I'm live, I try to have insightful conversations, encourage people to ask questions, and we can talk about it together. I try to have that safe environment to, if you are confused about what's going on or why we care, you know, let's talk about it. Let's change minds and make ripples, make waves in positive ways. I want to go back to video game stuff. I really do. But until things change, which we're in a marathon here, this is a long, long battle. I don't see that happening, but I'm happy to talk nerd with anyone that wants to talk nerd too. Because it is nice to unplug from the harsh realities once in a while to recenter yourself and re-energize. So huge Star Wars nerd, Dungeons and Dragons fan, and I played just an absolute ton of video games over my lifetime. So I'm happy to talk about anything related to that as well.
Awesome. Awesome. Um, yeah, and then I will post your link tree and everything up there. for anybody to find you. For myself, my personal and political page, it's under at DissentDad. And then the actual podcast, if you just want that, it's at Occupation Breakdown. The full podcast is on Facebook and YouTube. And then I also have Instagram, and I think I have a Substack that, it's on there as well. But anyways, I appreciate everybody listening today. Thank you, Whipple Walrus, Lake Cashew, for joining us today. I just absolutely appreciate the insights, the stories, and the kind of you've shown for our community. So thank you so much for being here today, and appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.